After being trafficked to a remote village, the villagers wanted to offer me as a sacrifice. But they didn't know I was something far more terrifying than the god they worshipped. I took over the body of a girl who had just died. She'd killed herself. Her neck was nearly snapped in two. I twisted it back into place with a casual flick of my wrist. You brat! So this is where you ran off to? I've been looking everywhere for you. A frantic voice shouted from behind me. I turned my head. A middle-aged woman rushed up to me, her face contorted with anger, and grabbed my hand. I already found a good job for you, and you just ran off without a word. How am I supposed to explain this to them? You know your brother is set on learning the piano. A single lesson costs hundreds of dollars. Don't you dare blame your mother for being cruel. You're a girl, so you don't need to finish school. But your brother has to carry on our family name. Without an education, he won't get a good job, and if he can't get a good job, he won't find a wife. The woman rambled on, dragging me along with her. I frowned slightly. Such a noisy woman. Maybe I'll just eat her. The woman kept chattering, completely unaware that the face of the person behind her was twisting into something monstrous. A thick, fleshy, red tentacle snaked out of my mouth, creeping silently toward the back of her head. The next second, the woman suddenly waved excitedly at someone up ahead. Hey, I found my daughter. She's right here. Come and get her. The tentacle in my mouth retracted. The woman half dragged, half pulled me out of the alley. Several tall, brawny men stood before us. The man in the lead had a vicious look, his narrow, triangular eyes coldly sizing me up. The woman shoved me hard, and I stumbled into the man. He seized my chin. Ow, tears welled up in my eyes. The other men audibly gulped. The woman quickly put on an obsequious smile. See, Boss Chen? I told you my daughter was pretty. Chen let go of me and said coldly, the money's been sent to your account. From now on, she has nothing to do with you. Of course. Absolutely, Boss Chen. My daughter is all yours now. Do whatever you want with her, the woman said, beaming. I looked at her in horror. Mom, didn't you say you found me a job? The woman avoided my gaze, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. Don't blame me. If you have to blame someone, blame yourself for being a girl. She hurried away. But she didn't know that just before she left, a tiny tendril had silently slithered up her pant leg. The next moment, a damp cloth was pressed over my mouth. I lost consciousness. Or rather, I pretended to. I acted as if I were groggily opening my eyes, finding myself in the back of a cargo truck. My hands and feet were tied with thick ropes. The air in the compartment was incredibly humid and sweltering. The temperature had to be nearly 104 degrees. A foul smell hung in the air. A girl lay passed out on the floor. Her chest heaved violently, and her cheeks were an unhealthy shade of red. Water, the girl rasped, her voice coarse and broken. I slowly undid the ropes and walked over to her. I squatted down, studying her with curiosity. It was obvious the girl was dying. She was like a fish thrown on the shore, gasping for a final rescue. I reached out a finger and touched her forehead. In an instant, the girl's memories flooded into my mind. She had come here on purpose. She was looking for her missing twin sister. The girl had staged the whole thing, having someone sell her for $1,500. She'd been locked in this small, stuffy truck for a full day and night with no food or water. And now, her life force was rapidly fading. In her final moments, she seemed to regain a bit of clarity, forcing her eyes open to look at me with a pleading gaze. I smiled. If I save you, will you do anything for me? Belong to me forever? Live for me and die for me? I whispered softly in her ear, my voice attempting lure. A second of hesitation crossed the girl's face, but then with her last ounce of strength, she nodded. I bit my wrist. Blood dripped onto the girl's lips. She licked it up thirstily. Soon, the color returned to her face, and her breathing steadied. She sat up, looking at me with a mixture of fear and gratitude. What should I call you? The girl asked, trembling as she prostrated herself at my feet. I thought for a moment. Long ago, someone had defined me as an unspeakable monster. I didn't have a name. But this body's original name was Bella. You can just call me Bella, I said with a slight smile. Bella? The girl's expression froze. She shook her head in terror. I can't just say your name. I'll call you master. After that, she stayed close to my feet. Though she looked much older than me, she acted like a small, weak animal. My name is Sarah. I let them capture me on purpose. My sister disappeared a year ago. I looked for her for a long time. I reported it to the police, put up missing person posters everywhere, but there were no leads. Then a week ago, I dreamed of her. She was lying on the ground, her hands and feet tied. A lot of people were surrounding her. They were wearing masks and chanting something I couldn't understand. I could feel my sister's fear. I yelled her name, and somehow she heard me. She struggled to turn her head towards me and said 2 words. Run. Sarah's lips trembled slightly. Her face was pale, as if she was reliving something truly awful. Even in the dream, I could feel something terrifying watching me. Then I saw them stab my sister's hands and feet with a sharp knife. She was shaking in pain. I screamed her name, but the next second I woke up. My own hands and feet were in agony, as if they'd been pierced by a knife. I knew it wasn't just a dream. My sister and I have had this strange psychic connection since we were kids. Whenever she got hurt, I would feel her pain. So I knew something must have happened to my sister. But I never thought I'd almost die on the way, before I could even find her. Thank goodness you saved me. I have to find her, even if she might be. Sarah lowered her head, leaving the rest unsaid. Deep down, she must have known her sister was likely dead. When she looked up again, her eyes shone with endless reverence for me. I knew that if I told her to die for me right then, she would give her life without hesitation. I patted her head, but a fragment of a memory flashed through my mind. Once upon a time, someone else had looked at me with those same wet, pleading eyes. He knelt at my feet, kissing my toes, telling me he was my most loyal follower, begging me to spare him a glance. But I had too many followers back then. I'd long forgotten his face. Sarah eventually fell asleep at my feet. An hour later, we were roughly thrown out of the truck. This was a remote mountain village. Chen and his men dragged us into a house. Village chief, they're all yours now. Make sure nothing goes wrong before the sacrifice. A gaunt old man with a face full of wrinkles nodded with a smile. He looked at Sarah and froze for a few seconds. She looks just like the last sacrifice. Sarah's body trembled violently. Chen walked up to Sarah, grabbed her chin and smiled. You're related to the last one, aren't you? Let me guess, sister or cousin. Sarah bit her lip, saying nothing. Not talking, huh? It's fine. You'll be dead soon anyway, Chen said coldly. He seemed to have other business, so he gave the village chief a few instructions and left. The village chief's cloudy eyes lingered on my exposed legs for a few extra seconds. I flinched in terror. Finally, Sarah and I were thrown into the woodshed. The woodshed was dilapidated and filthy. The only window was boarded up, letting in only a sliver of light. To my surprise, the village chief untied us. As he did, his wrinkled hands deliberately brushed against my skin, lingering for far too long. The chief squeezed my waist, his fingers moving suggestively upward. City girls are always so soft. It's a shame you have to die so soon. You're still a virgin, right? Why don't I show you a good time before you go? I struggled a little. The village chief only grew more excited. He panted heavily, grinning. Be a good girl now. No screaming. The last sacrifices were so uncooperative. I had to break their arms and legs. These little arms and legs of yours, one good squeeze from me, and they'll snap. Suddenly, splat. The village chief instinctively looked up as a drop of slime fell from the ceiling onto his face. Shit. What the hell was that? He wiped the sticky liquid off his face in disgust. But he didn't see that within the fluid, something tiny was wriggling. What a pain, the village chief muttered. Just as he was about to continue, his expression froze into one of pure terror. The frail girl beneath him had transformed into a horrifying monster. Its face was covered in a dense cluster of eyes, each one staring right at him. The village chief let out a string of curses and screamed in fear. But the next second, he realized he must have been mistaken. There was no monster, just 2 helpless sacrifices. But the vision had completely killed his mood. The village chief shot me a dark look. I'll be back tonight. With that, he left. I walked over to the wall. It was covered in scratches, some deep, some shallow. They looked like marks left by someone desperately clawing with their fingernails. This is my sister's. Sarah crouched down, trembling, and picked up a pink acrylic nail from the ground. She loved getting her nails done. She was always showing me pictures of her new manicures. The manicure she showed me before she disappeared. It looked exactly like this, Sarah said, her eyes red as she clutched the nail tightly. It was stained with dark red blood. My hand slowly glided over the scratches. Instantly, fragments of images flooded my mind. A girl who looked almost identical to Sarah was cowering in a corner, her face filled with terror. Stay away, please. The ugly male villagers had leering, lustful smiles on their faces. You're gonna be a sacrifice tomorrow anyway, so what's the harm in letting us have some fun first? The girls' cries mingled with the men's grimy panting. The foul stench of humanity's ugliest desires filled the air. I saw the village chief's face. He was holding a very sharp stick, a cruel smile on his face. I've been wanting to try this for a long time. The other girls were too fragile. I ended up killing a few of them. You look pretty sturdy though. So why don't you make your uncle happy? The sharp stick moved slowly toward the girl. A piercing scream echoed. I let out a sigh of contentment, my eyes narrowing in satisfaction. Desire, ugliness, and fear. My favorite things. I watched the girl endure a night of hell. She lay on the ground, barely breathing, her eyes numb and empty. At night, Chen and his men dragged her out. She lay on the ground, a strange ritual circle drawn beneath her. All the villagers wore masks. They chanted in a very old language. The next moment, Chen walked up to the girl. He raised a sharp awl high in the air. At that moment, the girl's terror peaked. The awl plunged into the palm of her hand. Thick blood gushed out. Then the awl pierced the girl's stomach, slowly slicing upward, opening her chest. But with her last bit of strength, she forced her head to turn, staring intently in one direction. She seemed to use all her remaining energy to let out a faint whisper. Run. Finally, the girl's body convulsed a few times and then went still. Chen pulled out her heart and held it high. A sacrifice to our great God. He carefully placed the heart in the center of the circle. The girl's blood mysteriously pooled together. From the blood, a humanoid figure slowly began to rise. All the villagers bowed their heads in terror. Not enough, I need more. A sickening chewing sound filled the air, accompanied by a strange, hoarse voice. I narrowed my eyes slightly. I thought it might be something interesting. Turns out it was just this. Boring. I'll just eat it along with the villagers during the ritual. Just as I was about to withdraw my consciousness, suddenly, I felt something watching me. An extremely intense gaze was fixed on me. Then a short, low chuckle echoed in my ear. I pulled back my thoughts, frowning. Seeing my furrowed brow, Sarah asked nervously, Master, what is it? I shook my head. It wasn't a big deal, but the feeling left me very unsettled. This was the first time another consciousness had ever invaded my own. I couldn't even trace its source. This meant there was something here with power comparable to my own. Tens of thousands of years ago, I was indeed the strongest god in the world. But all gods have a fatal weakness. We need followers. We need the powerful and devout faith of humans. Just as they give us power, they can also take it away. If no one remembers us, no one worships us, our power will gradually weaken over time. Eventually, we might even fade away entirely. I slept for a very long time. When I awoke, many had already forgotten me. As a result, my power was somewhat diminished compared to before. But I am still the most ancient of deities, the origin of the universe. There shouldn't be any species in this world stronger than me. I frowned deeply. And that consciousness, it felt very close. Could it be Sarah? I turned my head and stared at Sarah. Sarah couldn't even meet my gaze, lowering her head and trembling. Master. It couldn't be her. I had already seen her memories. What could it be? I was getting annoyed. I told Sarah to stay put. I was going out to look for clues about her sister. Sarah gratefully kissed the back of my hand, looking at me with teary eyes. I never told her. Her sister was already dead. Because there is nothing more amusing than the look on someone's face when a great hope is finally shattered. I walked out of the woodshed. The village chief was standing in the yard, his head down, muttering, "Why is it so itchy? Did a bug bite me?" He scratched the skin on his arm furiously, the speed increasing. Bloody scratches soon appeared on his withered arm. But it did nothing to relieve the itching. He could vaguely see something writhing under his skin. The surface of his brownish skin was covered in a dense rash of transparent blisters. Inside each blister, a small black dot was squirming. I stood silently beside the village chief, watching his expression become more and more frantic. He couldn't see me now. To be precise, if I don't want to be seen, no one can see me. The chief's state was exactly as I had planned. This is my unique ability. I can cause a person's mental state to plummet in a short amount of time. What you might call a sanity break. People become dazed and frenzied, seeing all sorts of illusions until their minds completely collapse. But that's not the most terrifying part of my power. The most terrifying part is assimilation and contagion. Once a person is infected, he can spread it to other normal humans. The village chief's throat made a hoarse wheezing sound, like a broken fan. His eyes were wide to their limit. There are bugs crawling inside me. The chief rushed into the house, grabbed a pair of scissors, and stabbed them violently into his arm. He stabbed at the blisters relentlessly, as if he'd gone mad. Squish. The sound of the blisters popping echoed. A pale yellow liquid oozed out. Yet he seemed to feel no pain. I watched him with a delighted expression. His arm was a bloody mess, covered in gruesome holes. You could even see the bone through the wounds. Suddenly, a gaunt old woman walked in from outside. She stared at the village chief in shock, frozen for a few seconds before rushing over. "You old fool, have you lost your mind?" The thick smell of blood filled the air. The village chief looked at his wife with a numb expression. "I have bugs in my body, I have to kill them." The old woman anxiously tried to grab the scissors. You're crazy. There are no bugs." I leaned in close to the village chief's ear and whispered, "Look at what's standing in front of you. Is that really your wife? Or is it the girl you raped multiple times, the one you personally sent to the altar?" The village chief's body shook violently. He stared at his wife, and suddenly his expression froze. That wasn't his familiar wife at all. It was clearly the dead sacrifice, the one he had violated over and over. The sacrifice was standing right in front of him. Her pale, bluish face was covered in hideous, pitted holes. From every hole, sticky maggots wriggled out. What terrified him most was that she was smiling at him. Every time she grinned, a foul-smelling black liquid seeped from her mouth. "The bugs came from you. I'll kill you. The village chief plunged the scissors into his wife's neck. The old woman didn't even have time to scream before she stumbled and fell to the ground. But the village chief wasn't satisfied. Muttering about killing the bugs, he stabbed his wife's face over and over until it was unrecognizable. I watched it all with great enjoyment. I squatted down, dipped my finger in their blood, and drew a little circle. The woman on the ground had long since been stabbed into a bloody pulp, her original features completely gone. But the village chief still didn't seem to think it was enough. Itchy, still itchy, so itchy. He turned his gaze to his own neck, his eyes vacant. "There are bugs here too, got to kill all the bugs." Chen arrived, drawn by the screams. He walked into the yard and frowned. The smell of blood was overwhelming. But the yard was clean. There was nothing there. Chen immediately went to the woodshed and unlocked it. A girl was huddled in the corner. "Where's the other one?" Chen demanded. Sarah's lips moved, but she said nothing. Chen's brow tightened. He grabbed Sarah by the neck and hissed, "I'm not kidding. Where did she go?" The girl's face turned beet red as she gasped for air, tears of suffocation streaming down her face. But she still said nothing. Chen thought to himself, "Did that old bastard, the chief, take her?" Watching the girl's face turn from red to blue, her breathing growing weaker, Chen finally scowled and let her go. But just then, he thought he saw a fleeting smile cross the girl's face. When I walked in, being dragged by the village chief, Chen was visibly stunned. He quickly strode over, his face dark, and grabbed the chief's collar. "What the hell are you doing? I told you, if you want to mess around, do it here. Don't take the sacrifice out of the village. Do you think this is 50 years ago? It's not easy for me to snatch someone and bring them here. The only reason no one's found out about all the people who've died in our village is because I work my ass off to cover our tracks. You saved my father's life. That's the only reason I've put up with you. You played those other girls to death, and I didn't say anything. But now you're just taking them wherever you want. After his string of curses, he calmed down a bit. The village chief, uncharacteristically, didn't argue back. He just stared at Chen with a blank expression. Chen seemed unsettled by the stare and slowly let go. He turned to look at me. Seeing my clothes were neat and nothing seemed out of place, his frown deepened. The sacrifice is tonight. Don't cause any more trouble, Chen said coldly. As he turned to leave, the village chief suddenly grabbed his arm. For a moment, Chen felt like he had grabbed something incredibly slick. It didn't feel like human skin. It felt more like grabbing a slippery bar of soap. He froze. A strong sense of unease rose within him. The village chief looked stranger than usual, too. His face was frighteningly pale, his eyes bulged excessively, and more importantly, the village chief's eyes never left him. Chen had killed many girls with his own hands, but this was the first time he'd ever felt such a sense of dread. He turned to leave but suddenly stepped on something. Squelch. Chen looked down and saw a mushy, bloody pile of worms. But when he looked closer, they weren't worms at all. They were a pair of human eyeballs. Chen's face went deathly pale. He shook his head violently. Beneath his shoe, the ground was clean. There was nothing there. It was as if he had imagined it all. Chen muttered a few curses and hurried away. Night fell. Sarah leaned against me, her eyes closed. Faint tear tracks stained her cheeks. Suddenly, she gasped, as if waking from a nightmare. Then Sarah's face turned visibly pale. Her voice choked with suppressed sobs as she said, "Master, I think my sister might already be dead. I just dreamed she came to say goodbye to me, telling me to live a good life." Sarah finally broke down, hugging me and sobbing uncontrollably. I thought she would lose all hope, but to my surprise, she looked at me seriously and said, "I can't let my sister die in vain. I'm going to make sure these people face justice." I couldn't help but laugh. Justice? I don't care about that. I'll just eat them all. Late at night, Sarah and I were tied up and taken to the village shrine. A giant statue was worshipped here. It was a statue of a woman with soft features. Sarah gripped my hand in fear. All the villagers put on masks and knelt before the statue, assuming strange prayer poses. A strange, bright red ritual circle was drawn on the shrine floor. Chen motioned for several villagers to place me in the center of the circle. I started crying in fear, begging Chen to let me go. Chen's eyes, hidden behind the mask, stared at me coldly. "Let you go? Not unless we want to die." I saw Chen subconsciously scratch his ear. A thick, black liquid oozed out. Then, a black worm covered in tiny tentacles crawled out of his ear. Chen screamed in terror. He grabbed the worm, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it frantically. I chuckled softly. The infection was beginning. The villagers looked at Chen in confusion, seemingly not understanding what he was doing. One of the elders walked up to Chen. "Young Chen, what's happening? The ritual starts in 10 minutes. We can't have any mistakes or else." The elder's voice was laced with deep fear. Chen steadied his breathing. When he looked down again, the worm on the ground was gone. But he could still hear the faint rustling of a worm squirming in his ear. He forced himself to calm down. I was secured in the center of the circle. Chen walked up to me, raised a sharp knife, and plunged it into the palm of my hand. My body trembled, and I cried out in pain. Blood flowed from my palm. The villagers surrounded me, their eyes chillingly indifferent. Just then, a female villager screamed, "She's not bleeding blood, it's a swarm of bugs." "What bugs? Are you crazy?" "Yeah, it's clearly blood." Chen's body shook violently, because he saw it too. Bugs. Bizarre, soft-bodied creatures were pouring out of the girl's palm. The girl lying in the center of the circle opened her eyes wide and gave him a grotesque smile. No, it wasn't a girl anymore. It was an unspeakable monster. Her body was covered in countless pustule-like eyes. The eyes glowed with a faint green light, staring at him unblinkingly. Innumerable tentacles writhed across her skin, oozing a sticky black liquid. "Kill it, kill the monster." Chen raised his knife and charged crazily at the girl. But he wasn't stabbing the girl. He was stabbing an ordinary villager. The sound of a knife plunging into flesh echoed. Screams erupted from the villagers one after another. I stood up, watching the villagers descend into a frenzy, killing each other. They had completely lost their minds. The next moment, the statue suddenly cracked open. A bloody humanoid figure crawled out. This was the god the villagers worshipped. Just a weak spirit that had been cultivating its power for 10,000 years. How could something like this be called a god? The moment it saw me, it was terrified. It wanted to flee. But how could I let it get away? Countless tentacles from my body wrapped tightly around it. It let out a series of screams, struggling to break free. But it was completely useless. In the end, I ate every last bit of it. The thick stench of blood filled the air. The mangled corpses of the villagers lay scattered on the ground. I licked my tentacles, completely satisfied. After absorbing so much nourishment, they felt slick and glossy. Sorry, I didn't let them face justice. I picked up a stray intestine from the ground and played with it contentedly. Sarah just stood there, a stunned look on her face. I thought she was just unnerved by the bloody scene. She stared at me for a moment, then suddenly smiled. I realized something was wrong. The real Sarah would never have the guts to stare at me like that. Just then Chen, who was on the ground with only a breath left, suddenly opened his eyes wide and used all his strength to speak. I remember now, she was already dead. After saying that, a torrent of blood poured from his mouth, and he went limp. I frowned and used my tentacles to probe Chen's memory. Sarah hadn't been in the back of the truck for just one day. It had been 3 whole days. In the extreme heat, her body had already begun to show signs of decay. Chen and his men were about to throw her out. But at some point, the girl had come back to life. But Chen's memory had been altered. Some force had erased the memory of the girl already being dead. So Sarah, like me, was just a vessel. I stared at her with interest. What exactly are you? Very few have ever been able to deceive me. Sarah let out a soft chuckle. Her laugh was the same as the one I'd heard when that consciousness invaded my mind. Low and raspy. It was a man's voice. My expression gradually grew serious. In an instant, Sarah's form underwent a dramatic transformation. A broken, hoarse voice came from her throat. Finally, I found you. A tall man appeared before me. He had exquisitely handsome features. The man walked up to me, knelt down, took my foot, and gently kissed my toes. You're as mischievous as ever. I've been looking for you for so long that I've forgotten how long it's been. You must have forgotten me. He gazed at me with adoration. I stared at him for a few seconds, and then fragments of memory began to return. 10,000 years ago, I personally brought a group of followers back from the human world. They would kneel before me every day, praying with devout piety. Among these young men and women, there was one boy I favored above all others, because he possessed an exceptionally beautiful face. Every day, the boy would kneel at my feet, rubbing his cheek against my calf, looking up at me with wet, pleading eyes. Master, I beg you, look at me a little longer. If you look at me for just one more second, I'll be so happy. Just one more glance, I'm begging you. I don't want wealth or power. I'm not like them. I only love you. All I need is your love. Have pity on me, my master. But even the most beautiful face becomes tiresome. I soon lost interest in that group of followers. I let them go. But I gave them wealth and prosperity. Only that boy refused to leave, no matter what. Master, do you not like my face anymore? I would rather die than leave you, master. Since master has grown tired of this face. I watched as he took a knife and peeled the skin from his own face. Though his whole body trembled in pain, his eyes still overflowed with endless love for me. It's wonderful. Master, you looked at me for so long just now. I'm so happy. Please look at me one more time. I beg you. I love you so much. I'm going crazy with my love for you. Whispers spilled from his lips. Blood streamed down his face, but he was smiling. For the first time, I felt a sense of novelty. So I kept only him with me for a time. The boy cared for me day and night, watching me with obsessive fascination. Later, I grew weary of everything in this world. I went to an ice cave at the bottom of the sea and fell into a deep sleep. That sleep lasted for 10,000 years. If it weren't for an Antarctic expedition team, I would not have woken up. So it was you, I said, a little surprised. The boy was clearly human, yet he had lived for 10,000 years. He had also grown from a slender, beautiful youth into a man with mature features. I knew that as a human, I couldn't be with you for long. After you disappeared, I searched for you for so long. I was so scared that I would die before I ever saw you again. So I started looking for ways to live longer. I trained hard. I killed many people. All those people you once called beautiful, I killed them all. I'm sorry, but I was just so jealous of them. I eventually became powerful, but I still couldn't find you. I know you enjoy interesting things, so I gave some of my power to lesser spirits, having them entice humans into making sacrifices. I just knew you would come. It's wonderful. A thick black miasma erupted from the man, enveloping me completely. He carefully held my face and placed a kiss on my forehead. The way he looked at me, it was as if I were the world's greatest treasure. So this 10,000-year-old obsession had turned him into a powerful evil entity. I felt a little uncomfortable. To be honest, I hate the feeling of being manipulated. Maybe I'll just kill him. My eyes softened. So you've been waiting for me for this long. I'm so sorry. Hearing my words, the man's pale face gradually turned red. Master, I'm so happy. Truly, I am so happy. But before he could finish, my tentacle pierced through his chest. The man glanced down, then looked back up at me, completely unfazed. The smile on his face only grew wider. How wonderful. Master wants to kill me. I would love to be killed by Master. But then I wouldn't be able to see you anymore, so I can't die. I want to be with you forever and ever. I will come find you again. Wait for me. The man's figure gradually blurred and then vanished. I muttered to myself, what a creep. Following Bella's memories, I returned to her home in the city. The person who opened the door was a teenage boy who looked a bit like Bella. The moment he saw me, an incredulous look appeared on his face. Sis, didn't Mom sell you to that old guy? The boy was Bella's younger brother, Leo. You escaped? Good that you escaped. I don't know what happened to Mom. She went crazy and hacked Dad up pretty bad. Kept saying she saw bugs or something. Mom's in a mental hospital, and Dad's a vegetable. He was annoying, so I just pulled the plug. I've already spent most of that $7,500. You know I need a lot more money now, right? Get a job and start earning. And with you gone, there's no one to do the chores. The house is a mess. Leo casually grabbed me and pulled me inside. In his memory, I was still the meek, long-suffering Bella who would do anything for her family. But unfortunately, the original Bella was already dead. A fleshy red tentacle pierced through Leo's temple. The look of shock hadn't even left his face as he collapsed to the floor. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I neatly kicked Leo's body into a room, and then opened the door. Standing outside were 3 girls about Bella's age. The moment they saw me, they sneered. Bella, you haven't been to school for 2 days. You weren't scared, were you? If you don't want those pictures of you all over the school website, you'd better get back to class with us. Life's been a little boring without you to run our errands. I obediently followed behind the 3 girls, a slow smile spreading across my lips. I never thought the human world had gotten so interesting. Maybe I won't go back to sleep after all. The handsome man was enveloped in a black mist, which began to repair the hole in his chest. A series of repressed whispers came from his throat. Master, I'm coming for you. The end.